Good afternoon and welcome to the February 2nd, 2023 meeting of the Rotary Club of Orlando. I'd like to extend a special welcome to all of our visiting Rotarians and guests. And it is Groundhog Day. Does anybody know? Anybody know what happened at the groundhog saw his shadow, so we have to suffer through 6 more weeks of winter. It's 84 degrees today, right?
No more 90.
No. All right. Let me officially start the meeting with an invocation from Roger Phillips.
Hear the words, the prayers of John Wesley as adapted for Rotary. Dear Heavenly Father, grant us the grace as Rotarians, the courage to do all the good that we can, by all the means that we can, in all the ways that we can, in all the places we can, at all times that we can, to all the people that we can, as long as ever we can. All this we ask humbly in your holy name. Amen.
All right, thank you, Roger. And now for patriotic music, past president Jim Stowers.
Thank you, David. Let's sing God Bless America. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the ocean, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Jim. Now, just as a reminder, any of you who are carrying cell phones in your pocket, if you'd be kind enough to put them over to the silent mode till the end of the meeting, we'll remind you to turn the ringer back on at the end of the meeting. And now to introduce our guests and visitors, Craig Polges.
Thank you, President David, and good afternoon and happy February 2023. It's my honor to introduce visiting Rotarians and guests. And I would ask for those of you, when I call your name, to please stand and remain standing. Our club has a sweet tradition of a special welcome for you. First, our visiting Rotarian from Orlando Breakfast Club, David Rose. Where's David? Welcome, David. Our next guest is from a guest of Nelson, Jim Meyer. Where's Jim? I guess not. Nelson? He'll be back. Oh, okay. Perhaps a bio break. Okay, our next guest, Rich Ungaro, Aaron Whitehead. Where's Aaron? Welcome. Our next guest of George, Mary Crimmins. Mary, welcome. Next guest of Rich Ungaro, Kevin Ungaro. Where's Kevin? Welcome, Kevin. And the guest of our speaker, who will be introduced shortly, Jennifer Hellriggle. Hello, Jennifer. All right, how do we welcome our guests?
Hello, stranger, gather round. Welcome to our friendly town. Don't feel lonesome, let's shake hands. You're among Rotarians. Sit down, please.
All right. Thank you. Now, John, I'd like to ask past President John Stein to come up and say a few words about the book fair.
Thank you, President David. First, I want to thank everybody that participated in the Rock Lake Book Fair. There were 17 people, and it went off very smoothly and rather successfully. Every slot was filled with at least one person. So personally, thank you. Now, the next, I'm filled with book fairs today. On the desk over there is the book fair sign-up sheet for Ivy Lane, which will be February the 13th through the 17th. I'd like for each of y'all to look at it, and we will be sending out some more blasts to you. But if you can sign up for it there today, it's right at the tables you came in. Please do that. And thank you so much for your support of the book fair.
All right. Thank you, John. Now, this is a very exciting week for us because, of course, this is the week of our poker tournament. I know we're going to see everybody there Saturday night, and I'd like to ask President-elect Chris Whitney to come up and say a few words about that.
I always say that Rotary is a 7-day-a-week lifestyle, and on Thursdays, we take credit for all the great things that we do. And with that, I'm going to follow John in my thank yous. Thank you to everybody who got a phone call from me this week. I think I made 60 phone calls to the Rotarians that hadn't been recognized on one of our lists. Not everybody answered the phone. It's surprising me how many people actually hung up after answering their cell phones. It's very humbling. Like, I'm not a telemarketer, although I felt like one. So thank you to everybody who did answer the call. We had a bunch more people sign up for things. We collected a whole bunch more cash. So we're probably adding another scholarship just because of the cash donations, those who weren't able to come on Saturday made. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And your names will be on a list in the slideshow. We are close to being overbooked. If everybody actually shows up who signed up to play, we are going to have a full house. Now, we always have a percentage, so we'll see whether we trip that. We're over 180 players signed up, and the sign up fee covers all of our overhead, and we get a little bit of money, but all the chip ups and all those other kind of things to the evening are really where the cash flows in to fund our scholarship program. We are close to having all of our volunteers, but we're still looking for table sponsors. So right now, if you're signed up for setup, which is showing up a little earlier, we're probably going to be lobbying you to hang around till 8 or 9 o'clock when the tables start dwindling down. So be ready and prepared. If you're interested in being a table monitor, we're having a little training class right after our meeting today, and then we'll do that again on Saturday, just to help understand. There's a little belt you get to wear, and you collect money and receipts, and it's really kind of fun to hang out at the tables and watch the gambling happen. It's sort of like, you know, when you watch the movies where you're like, no, don't bid. No, you're not supposed to do that. But anyway, it's tons of fun. Thank you for all that. And that's my list. Bob Phipps, did you want to say something? And he's on a leash for 1 minute.
Yeah, but
They warned me that it's got to be considered a donation. It's not gambling. Everybody.
we need to get you a mic though, because the people on Zoom are not going to hear
I
you.
got it.
Okay.
All right, they got me. I'm sure they even heard it. No, we're ready. It's going to be fun. We've got a lot of teams. The teams have been growing like crazy. There's still the ability to get us some prizes. You know, I just realized that I forgot to get one of these treehouse rentals. A buddy of mine does Airbnbs in a treehouse. I forgot about that. Anything you can think of, a gift certificate from a restaurant. If you're out there, I've got a couple of more of those little posters left. And who are the ones that are actually playing also? Who here is playing in the tournament? Anybody? Kathy? Who else? And that's it. A couple people. You could hang around for the table meeting also, because we can use y'all as a table monitor during chip ups and add-ons. See you Saturday.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Now, speaking of table monitors, I asked a past president and district governor-elect nominee, Richard Harris, to stop up and say a couple words about that, and also about our recent donation from the district to the hurricane relief. So Dick has agreed to fill us in on that as well.
Well, let me start with the great news. When Hurricane Ian hit South Florida, we partnered with District 6960 to provide relief for the Rotarians in that area. Now, our district doesn't have a 501c3 foundation. So we prevailed on George, president of Rotary Club of Orlando Foundation,
to take on that task, and George said yes. And we put out the word to everyone in the district, and I'm happy to report that we have received $33,435, which our final check is signed today to be mailed to them. And that's the money, because we stepped forward, that our Rotarians in the district gave to support Rotarians hit by Hurricane Ian. So thank you all for that. That was a truly great response. Now, let me say a couple of words about tables. I call them table captains, people who are from our club to go collect the money for the players. We have two different mechanisms for them, in addition to sitting down and getting their chips that came with their ticket. They have an opportunity a couple of times to do a rebuy, and rebuys are $40 each. No option other than that. So when we have a break for a rebuy, we need people to jump in at each table and collect money from those players that want to rebuy. Now, we also will have some members check in and leave a credit card with us so they can sign a chit for a credit purchase. And it takes a little bit of training for a table captain to negotiate all of that. We're going to have 20 tables. We need at least 15 table captains early on. Well, as people get knocked out and the number of tables gets condensed, that 15 doesn't go on all night. But here's what you will have. You'll have a numbered bag. You'll have cash to make change. Say somebody, excuse me, has $100 bill and they only want to buy $50 worth of chips. Well, you need to make change. You'll also, in your bag, you'll have two books. One, a receipt book for rebuys, another, a receipt book for chip ups when the amount they buy is dependent on the poker player. So it gets a little more complicated than just running around picking money up off the table. So I've written a instruction, and the instruction has pictures for those of you who might jump in and be lightly trained. So we always like pictures so you know exactly what you're doing. But anyway, that's the system. And for a few of you who might be out parking or whatever, once the poker starts, you won't need to be out there. And we could use a couple more hours of your time as table captains. So I have a group that's going to help with registration. So after this meeting, I need the following folks for just a few minutes. Bill, Rich Ungaro, Peter Curia, Jason, myself, Tammy, and anybody else that wants to sit in on that, because we really need to do well collecting money, because however efficient we are, drops right to the bottom line and buys more scholarships. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dick. Appreciate you. And please, if you're interested in being the table captain / table monitor, meet up with Dick after the meeting today. It'll just take a few minutes and it'll be well worth your time to do that. So, okay. Next, Jenny Career, do you wanted to? No, okay. Okay, we'll push that off until next time about the raffle sales. Then I think we're going to go directly to the happy dollars then. Denny?
Thank you. Just so you know, Peter Curry is going to be coming with me. If anybody gives more than $5, we're going to give them a ticket for the raffle also. Keep in mind what we're doing here is we're raising money for the club. This is not replacing happy dollars. This is augmenting happy dollars. So if there's any questions, let me know. We're going to stay with our chronological tour of the history of Rotary. Who was the very first president of Rotary International? Anybody know? Not Rotary International, Rotary period. Of Rotary One, the Chicago Rotary Club. I'll give you a hint. He was one of the 4 founders. He was a coal dealer. It was not Paul Harris. No, it was Sylvester Shealy. Anybody want to give any money for the good of the order? Say anything? Tom Reich does. Suppose you don't know, Tom Reich is now actually a member of the Crescent City Club up in North Florida, and he's their president-elect for next year. Want to say anything?
Yes, something totally non-football related. I got an interesting notice the other day. I've told y'all that I have a television show on, a 12-episode show called Cartoon Wars. Well, Tubi just notified me it hit the 10 million view mark, which is really cool.
Bill, did you give me more than $5? You did. Okay, give a ticket to Tom. Eddie, want to say something? Okay, Rotary expanded fairly quickly. When these guys got together, you know, there was this kind of an idea, and what it spread by the 5th meeting, they had over 100 people coming to the club. They actually no longer could meet at the offices. They had to meet at the Palmer House, one of my favorite hotels in Chicago itself, and they just went on from there. In 1908, they expanded. Where was the second Rotary Club? Rotary 2. Anybody know? What was that? No, Oakland was number 3. Now, it wasn't Seattle. It was San Francisco. San Francisco 2, Oakland was 3. Most of the early Rotary clubs were actually out in California because the San Francisco Club was really proactive in making Rotary grow. By 1910, just 2 years after that, there were 16 Rotary clubs with over 1,800 members. Can you believe that? So they had a convention in Chicago, the first ever convention. What was actually the first name of the organization? Anybody know? It was the American Association of Rotary Clubs. And who was the very first president of Rotary? That was Paul Harris. Tommy got it. He was right. Want to say something? No? Nobody want to talk today? John, you want to say something?
$5 for the 5 Rotarian Club members that contributed $100 in becoming a sustaining member last week. We have brought in 7 sustaining members to match the Rotary Foundation challenge that our anonymous member has said. We have to get 8 more. Please, if you aren't a sustaining member now, sign up and let's meet that challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anybody else? Nope, Bill does. Okay.
I have 3 happy dollars for Mike, Tony, and Bob for getting all those poker teams together. It's going to be a tremendously successful event for us financially. I just want to thank them for their hard work.
Just warning you in advance, I'm winning. Rich?
Well, I'm back from my cruise. I'm leaving again March 2nd, March 5th on another cruise. I sent an email to Tom Brady yesterday congratulating him on retiring since I've done it 4 times. He's only done it twice. But anyway, I invited Kevin, my youngest son, to come with me today because Kevin saved my wife and I a ton of money on our cable bill with Spectrum and our cell phone bill. And I thought, you know, Kevin, you should come along and give everybody an opportunity to meet you just in case anybody wants to help you save any money. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Rich. Anybody else? Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you, Danny.
Well, wait a minute. Give a ticket also to us.
All right, thank you.
Do we have more?
So yeah, my name Kevin Ungaro. I did just start with a new company. We do essential services, which is cell phones, internet, stuff you pay already for. You don't have to leave that carrier. It's just you would go through my website. If anybody has any more information, I'd be happy to share it with you and get your contact information and set up a Zoom call with my business partner.
All right, thanks very much. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker today. Marni Stahlman has a 35-year career in healthcare delivery management, medical education, and mental behavioral healthcare organizations. Since 2020, she's served as the president and CEO of Mental Health Association of Central Florida. She's also the past president of the Shepherd's Hope, which we have been a sponsor of as well in this club. She was president of that for 5 years. And addition, she's been an adjunct professor in the Department of Social Innovation for Rollins College in Winter Park. So please help me welcome Marni Stahlman as our guest speaker. You have to use the mic, and people on Zoom can't hear you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having us. It's nice to be back in person, isn't it? Don't know about you, but it's been a while since I've had the opportunity to address a club in person. So it's nice to see your faces and welcome. Thanks for having us today. As I was introduced, I've actually been before this club before, invited by my very good friend, Dr. Kevin Sharon, who I'm dismayed is not here today. So he needs to come back to the meeting. But I'm here today by invitation to talk to you about where we are in our community regarding mental health. There's been a lot of conversation, a lot of media, and then also to talk to you a little bit about our organization, the Mental Health Association of Central Florida. So if our presentation, is it available up on the screen? Okay, because I thought I had sent it on, Tammy, to the, yeah. Okay, well, then I will wing it. How's that? So let me tell you a little bit about our association first, and then I'll go into the state of where we are with mental health. So by show of hands, anybody here actually heard of the Mental Health Association of Central Florida? Yeah, how did you hear about us, or how do you know about us?
My father, who was a member of this club, was one of the founders.
Really? I just had a founder's question come up yesterday. So I'm going to see you right after this meeting because I'm very interested in that. So the organization, by all accounts, is one of the oldest nonprofit organizations here in Central Florida. We were founded in 1946 by a group of families that had loved ones that were being hospitalized for what at that time was considered a chronic mental illness and being sent away to institutions. I think today, if we were to open up those treatment plans and files of those individual family members, we would find that, like many of us, they probably suffered from situational anxiety or depressive disorders that with some medication and good outpatient therapy would have not necessitated them being sent away or hospitalized for indefinite periods of time. So as an organization, we actually predate the National Mental Health Association, which today is known as Mental Health America, and they are very prominent, and we are an affiliated member. We started out as our organization, really, as I said, advocacy, working with families and individuals, really trying to bring awareness to what is the mental health condition, what is mental wellness. And over the next, really, I would say 40 to 50 years, up until 1972, that was primarily our main focus. And then something very interesting and important happened here in the state of Florida in 1972. And that was the creation of something called the Florida Mental Health Act, which euphemistically today is referred to as the Baker Act. Anybody familiar or heard of that term? Yeah. Anybody know why, since we're doing some history during those happy dollars, anybody know why it's called the Baker Act? It's named after Maxine Baker, who was the first female state representative elected to the Florida State Legislature, and she was from Central Florida. She was the first individual that stood up and said, we need to have some sort of patient's bill of rights. We need to understand what is informed consent and what is the process when someone is involuntarily taken for a hospitalization and evaluation psychiatrically. What is the length of time of that and who would be involved in that? And that was really the beginning of mental health services here in the state of Florida. And we were very involved as an organization and have been since that time with making sure that rights of individuals with mental illness and their families are very well protected. So today the Mental Health Association has a variety of programs. They're listed. There's papers on your table where you can talk and see a little bit more, but I'm going to run through them. But before I do that, that, I want to talk about where we are as a community, as a state, and as a country, as a world, really, with where we are with the state of mental health. It's of no surprise, hopefully, to everybody that's here today, that as we look at the fact that we're quickly approaching March 8th, which is the anniversary here locally in the state and around our community, where we were shut down officially for COVID. That's going to be 3 years in March. It's funny that it's Groundhog Day today, because sometimes for many of us, that experience as we've come through COVID very much is like a Groundhog Day experience. And one of the things that started to emerge as we came out of what we call the acute phase of COVID, which was, gosh, there's too many people dying of this disease, how do we handle that? Was about 8 months later when people started to emerge into what we call the chronic or long COVID diagnosis period. We were then able to start collecting some data on how people were recovering. And what individuals were reporting was that within about 3 to 6 months of the information, of the diagnosis, there's our PowerPoint. So let's move. If I have a clicker, I can do it, or if I can just say advance our slide, then we can do that. So we're going to go to slide 4 if we can. Sure. Great. Thank you so much. So here's some information. So one of the things that came out is as people started reporting in their recovery of long COVID, other types of symptoms that they were experiencing, they were also reporting that within about 3 to 6 months of their recovery, they were reporting situational instances of anxiety or depression. For many of them, it was the first time that they had had to deal with that as a disorder in any way. And now, 3 years into it, we're finding that neurologically, our brains have been affected. And as we have been affected physically, we have also been affected emotionally from what we all have experienced. Because quite frankly, as an organism, as a human race type of organism, we're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to be isolated, and we're not meant to not be able to touch and be around or intimate with other people. And it has had negative effects on how our mental health is recovered. So when we talk about, or when I go out and I speak to organizations, they say, first and foremost, well, when are things going to get back to normal? We're there. This is it. This is the new normal. And that's been a hard adjustment for a lot of individuals to contemplate and also integrate as they move forward. Next slide. We're on a little bit of a delay. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this, and this PowerPoint can be available for anybody that's interested to have it. And also I'll just make a little commercial break here. We do a lot of public speaking for large and small businesses and community organizations across the community, talking about this and how to create opportunities for wellness in your workplace or in your environment. So if you're interested, please see me afterwards. But the state of mental health in America, and let's move on to next slide, is actually not very good. And one of the things that we're seeing right now is a real explosion, so to speak, especially with children and adolescents and older adults. Because as they grapple with these feelings of depression and anxiety, they're self-reporting a real spike. And one of the things, particularly within these age groups, is suicide ideations and what we call suicide completions. It's interesting that we're right behind here the tracks that come in through our main rail system. The Mental Health Association is currently involved with a project that we've been in now 6 months, and it has about another 1.5 years to go, with the Florida Department of Transportation. Because it turns out that from Lake Mary all the way down to Kissimmee, this is the most deadly piece of rail track in the southeastern United States. And when I say deadly, it's being used as a method of suicide completion. For individuals that may live in the Winter Park or Maitland area, that area across Howell Branch, right there off of in downtown Maitland, is a particularly dangerous spot. Sanford is a particularly dangerous spot. And then just down the way by Orlando Health and the rail station there. And so we're involved right now with a project with rail and signal individuals and law enforcement individuals to make sure that they understand how to spot someone that might be in crisis and how to intervene. I'm not sure what happened to this slide, but let's move forward. So with the spike that we've seen in individuals talking about anxiety and depression and different elements of how they've managed and what they're experiencing, one of the things that we've also seen is a spike in the number of individuals that are being Baker acted, quite frankly, being taken against their will, involuntarily placed. So some criteria of the Baker Act is really very simple. They have to either be a threat to themselves or someone else. So they're either suicidal or homicidal. A licensed medical professional can put someone into an involuntary 72-hour hold, or a law enforcement individual. And we're seeing a real spike. And so one of the things that we spend a lot of time also with at the association is working with our local school districts, because we're seeing children and adolescents Baker acted right out of school in crisis. And our hospital partners, our partners at the 9th Judicial Circuit, the state attorney's office, the public defender's office are all involved. And I'm going to make a pitch at the end of our presentation for something called guardian advocates that you can participate in. So let's move on to the next slide. Past this. Let's move past this. So there's some myths and facts surrounding mental health that I really wanted to make sure we covered today. Individuals with mental health conditions don't recover. That's just so not true. In fact, many of us right now here in the room, I would say, I have a vast majority of individuals that have either sought out psychotherapy or individual counseling, or maybe on some sort of medication, and they're functioning very well. It's no different when we think about diabetes, heart conditions, high cholesterol. We're very comfortable with taking medications that keep those in check and keep us monitored. And with mental health conditions, we're really about letting individuals embrace the idea that mental health is health, that it's part of our brain, it's part of our neurology, and that medication assistance can make us very functional and that we can recover from that. Another myth, individuals with mental health conditions can't work in stressful or demanding jobs. Again, that's just so not true. And we've seen over the rise of the last maybe 24 to 36 months, individuals stepping forward in business, in sports, in other celebrity focuses, Michael Phelps, Simone Biles, Selena Gomez, lots of actors and actresses talking about their state of mental health and recovery and mental wellness and how they manage that. And it certainly is something to not say that individuals with a psychiatric or psychological disability shouldn't and can't be treated just like everyone else. Individuals with mental health conditions have weak personalities or bad childhood. Well, there's certainly instances where we know that individuals have experienced what we call childhood trauma that can lead to a mental health crisis or chronic mental illness, but it's not about our personalities, it's about our brains. Individuals with mental health conditions pose a danger to others in the workplace. Well, certainly we've seen a rise of violence in the communities and in the workplace. And the truth of the matter is that individuals with psychiatric disabilities or chronic mental illnesses are not typically the individuals that commit these crimes, and in fact are sometimes victims themselves. It's individuals that are in a mental health crisis that possibly can commit these crimes, but individuals that are chronically mentally ill just aren't these characters. And it's really a disservice to themselves and to our community to continue to personalize them as the villains in these scenarios. Last myth, individuals with mental health conditions can't work until they're completely recovered. Well, we know in the workplace right now, there's lots of accommodations that are being done with individuals just well. In fact, I just did a session with the Orange County Bar Association about lawyers and mental health and well-being. Isn't that a group that really needs some attention there? And they're fully functioned. Next slide. Parallel day. So as I said, one of the real unfortunate things is we've seen a rise in suicide ideations and what we call suicide completions. In fact, if anybody's interested, and we have a really wonderful weekend ahead of us, the Mental Health Association has partnered with the Association for Suicide Prevention, and we are doing a walk out of darkness walk that will be out at a team on Saturday in the Baldwin Park area. And if you're interested and want to come out, you can get some information or go to our Facebook page to find out how you can walk with that. But look at these numbers here. 2.8 million adults in Florida have a mental health condition. In February of just this last year, almost 41% of them reported having anxiety and depression symptoms. 180,000 Floridians aged 12 to 17 have depression. And an American teenager now is the leading cause of death amongst 11 to 24-year-olds is suicide, with the method of completion being gun. This isn't an indictment about gun ownership. That's not a conversation we're about, but we are about safety and we are about access. And we do have an epidemic here. In fact, the Surgeon General of the United States has issued a health emergency talking about children and adolescents and suicide. Next slide. So I'm going to run through a number of our programs and how you can help individuals learn more about who we are, or if you are have a family member that needs information. The first is the Connections program. So on your card, on your table, you're going to see a business card that looks just like this, and it has a QR code on the back of it. Connections is a program that has been at the Mental Health Association since 1991. It is staffed by counselors and mental health professionals. Anyone can call this number or go online through the QR code and complete what we call a referral form, where you can seek information and about community services, not just related to mental health conditions, but homelessness, food, housing, transportation, access to health insurance. There's a lot of information here. Keep these cards because this is a way to find out. One of the questions we get asked a lot is, if I wanted to seek mental health counseling, where do I go? Who do I go to? If I have health insurance, if I don't have health insurance, I don't know where to go. The Connections program is all about doing that. And it's a phone call or a QR code away to get to and complete a referral form. Next one. Our Outlook Clinic. So this has been in a partnership with the Orange County government as well as Advent Health. It's been in place now, I think it's our 12th year. We're located just on the corner of Church and Westmoreland, 1 block from Explorer Stadium. And this is a clinic for individuals seeking outpatient psychotherapy or medication for their psychiatric illnesses and don't have health insurance. It's free. Let me say that again, it's free. So if you know someone that doesn't have health insurance and needs access to medication or therapy, they can call us through the Connections program and get a referral to Outlook Clinic. One of the really important things to know is that individuals that have a crisis that wind up being Baker Acted, oftentimes who are chronically mentally ill, the reason for that crisis is they're off their medication. And we know it's very expensive. And so if we know that we can put individuals in touch with our program where they can get that medication for free for as long as they need it, we know we're keeping them in good health. Next one. And they must be 18 years of age or older. Reflections Peer Recovery. So one of the things we know is that peer-to-peer is a really important and viable option. When you have somebody that's had a lived experience similar to yours, and they are able to share that and talk about it, we see more opportunities for recovery. So this Reflections program offers a number of support groups. They're done online. You don't have to actually come to an office. And we have individuals that are a part of these groups as far away as South America and England, not just here in Central Florida, on grief, on sexual trauma, on suicide prevention, a men's group, a women's group. They're in multiple languages. You can go to our website if you want to get more information, or the information on your table about how to access, again, free. Next slide. So this is where I hope to get a few of you that might be interested. One of the things that happens as a part of the Florida Mental Health Act, and when an individual is involuntarily committed for up to 72 hours, while they're in the facility providing the psychiatric care, many times they'll have a family member, a spouse, or a guardian that will be there to help with the treatment plan and to provide what's called informed consent. That means that they're explaining, or if the individual doesn't have the ability to have a level of competency to understand what treatment's being prescribed for them, they have a surrogate that acts in their behalf. In the state of Florida, there are 3 types of guardianships that exist under state statute. And the one that we work with is called guardian advocates. Next slide. So the Guardian Advocate, we are the only training program in Central Florida that provides the 4-hour certification that if you're interested in becoming a Guardian Advocate, either for a family member or volunteering to do it for someone else, we provide that online or in person for free. And the training is centered around helping you to understand what are the elements and methods that happen when someone is in a Baker Act facility, what are their rights, and how should they be treated fairly. The good news here is that you don't have to have any psychological, behavioral, or psychiatric experience. You just have to have a willingness to volunteer and a compassion and empathy for other people. The training is free. We provide a small stipend under a grant that we have from the Harper Family Foundation to entice you to potentially participate, so we can cover your expenses for mileage and other small ancillary ideas that you might have. And generally speaking, 1 or 2 people every 6 to 9 months, if you're interested, can be assigned. There are 6 Baker Acting receiving facilities. Here's something very unfortunate. They're called BARFs. Yeah. Baker Act receiving facilities. So I wish that weren't the case, but that's their name. So if we do have a call from a BARF saying that they have someone that's been treating in their facility, but they don't have a guardian with them, we can provide that guardian advocate to them. And they'll even, as the guardian advocate, go to court. Sometimes the court hearings with the magistrate are held right on the campuses of the BARF. Sometimes they're held at the courthouse, depending on who it is. Next slide. As I said, it's very easy. There's no requirement to have experience working or volunteering in the mental health or services. And there's great benefits to doing it and providing care and service to someone who is situationally just having a crisis and needs somebody that's looking out for their best interests, not just emotionally, but also legally. Next slide. Another session that we have, this was developed as a result of the pandemic, called Coping Together. We like to think and feature things called My Story Matters. So if you have a particular community resource or a personal experience, this is something that we project through our social media channels once a month. And feature different stories. A lot of times you would be so surprised that when you share a personal anecdote or story of your own experience or your family's experience, how moving and substantial that is, and connecting with other people out in the community. Because oftentimes we hear this, I thought I was the only one. I thought I was by myself. I didn't know there were other people having these same feelings or experiencing. And so by coming forward and speaking vocally about what your lived experiences, our hope is that other people watching online. So if you have an interest or an idea about a Coping Together segment, let us know and we'll talk to you about that. Next slide. So You Are a Lifeguard. Also on your table is another business card side, and it says You Are a Lifeguard. This is a program that we partnered with the Community Foundation of Central Florida with about 2 years ago. The idea is that lifeguards are not just for the pool. They're all around us. And by becoming and taking the pledge to become a lifeguard, you're signifying that you are making a commitment to the individuals around you to make sure that if they're expressing suicide ideations or have problems, that you're there to help them. We're wrapping up. I have about 2 minutes left. Look at that. I'm right on time. So I do want to say one other thing. I'm also on your table. During the hurricane, the Mental Health Associations of Central Florida's office, which is on the corner of Robinson and Fern Creek, was burglarized. And some computers were taken, much like the one that's right here. And so if you are so inclined, we are on a fundraiser right now to raise $5,000 to buy 5 new laptops, which were part of what was taken from us. And so there's a QR code and a sheet there on the table if you're interested, and it goes right to our website. I'm open to answer any questions. I feel like I went really fast, but I'm happy to.
Marni, thank you very much for your presentation and what you're doing in this community. I have one question to start things off. There was a very interesting article this morning in the Washington Post about mental health of teenagers and the growing suicide rate of teenagers. And they're kind of identifying this as a result of lack of sleep.
Yes.
Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yes. So it's also tied, and I'm familiar with that article because another one came out the day before from the Surgeon General of the United States saying that if you have a child 13 or older, 13 or younger, don't give them a cell phone. Because the other thing that happens is the impact of social media has played a great role in making sure that the detriment of our kids' mental health and well-being is at risk. I have a 15-year-old. We did her annual physical result review with her primary care care physician 2 weeks ago. And the very first question that the physician said was, how much sleep are you getting every night? And my daughter reported, because she's a freshman at Winter Park High School, I get about six hours. We need 8. And here's the thing, it doesn't matter if you're a teenager at 15 or you're like me that's almost 60, you need sleep. Our bodies need that regenerative time. And if we're not getting it, we're going to see negative results in all areas of our health. And one of the things that impedes us from getting that sleep is that insidious phone and that tie to social media. And so it's really very detrimental, and it's a big conversation.
Marni, what the article said that the seniors in high school are averaging 5 hours sleep nationally. So we're way, way behind in sleep deficit. Another question right here.
Okay, I heard you state something along that, mental health is healthcare, and the hospitals are saying that too. I recently got divorced, and in that divorce saying private school is not considered, it's considered a luxury, and so that doesn't get put in there. But mental health, I pay for my son's mental health and get him to about $400 a month, and that is still not considered by the court healthcare. It's still considered a luxury. When is that going to be addressed? Nothing's going to be done by the time my son's of age, but for the future, when are they going to decide that mental health is actually important in the court size?
Well, I think the answer to your question is we have to legislatively get to that point so that when we are in our court scenarios and we're in dissolution options like what you're talking about, that we have to educate. One of the things that happens here in the state of Florida that's very unfortunate is there are no reoccurring dollars in the state legislature earmarked for behavioral health care services. Every year we have to ask new. And that's a difficulty. It's very unusual. And we are 47th in the states out of 50, and that's not in a good way, for the amount of money we dedicate per person to mental health funding. One of the things that is happening, however, is within the Orange County Bar Association, I can't speak for Seminole, there is a strong push to educate family lawyers within that discipline about understanding mental health so that when they are going into dissolution and adjudicating, they're in there fighting for those services and that support within the families.
I just have a general comment. Thank God for you and the people that do what you do. There is no part of American life that's more neglected than mental health. When you think about it, people in mental health don't get together as groups and protest. They can't. So they really have no advocates other than their families are really struggling. My brother was mentally handicapped. My brother was Baker acted in the state of Florida. He passed away a few years ago from COVID, but he had a miserable life. Thank God there were some people that cared enough to take him in and do something with him. It is a tremendous disgrace in this country that we deal with this way. I don't know what the answer is. I wish I would, but I hope that you're not in a family where you have somebody that is mentally ill or has a problem with that, because it's not much fun, I can tell you that. So thank God for what you do.
Thank you for sharing that. And I can tell you there is a solution, and it's very simple. We talk about it. As much as we feel like it's possible to share our lived experiences is what makes the stigma less, and for more people to come forward and share their family's journey, their own personal recovery, and the story of what their experiences are, so that people understand that people with mental illness, we have a tenet, a philosophy at the Mental Health Association and Mental Health America called before stage 4. So in cancer, in heart disease, and other chronic illnesses, we have lots of preventative information that is there and available that is pushed forward about how to not get to the point where you are in a crisis. Damar Hamlin, the individual from the Buffalo Bills, is now partnered just this week in an announcement with the American Heart Association to talk about sudden cardiac arrest and the signs and symptoms that you can pay attention to. That's before stage 4. But when we talk about mental health, we don't do anything preventatively. What can we do for sleep? How do we eat? How do we rest? How do we socially interact with each other? We don't talk about that until we've hit crisis point. And I think the answer to your question is to talk, to have people of note and people who have just had regular lived experiences amongst each of us come forward and say, this is what I managed. It's not an indictment of who we are. It's part of our health. It's part of our brain. It's no different than volunteering that I take high blood pressure medication because I'm only, almost 60 and I like salt. So, there's things like that we can do better for each other to just talk about how we're feeling.
Thank you. How does pushing all the transgender and sex and stuff on the kids, how is that feeding into this? And are you seeing like kids who perhaps are mentally vulnerable being kind of led down that road rather than getting treatment, if that makes sense?
I'm not sure I understand when you say led down that road. Are you talking about how are individuals that have come forward and have an LGBTQ experience being embraced, or are you talking about something else?
I guess I'm just thinking about how mentally vulnerable kids can be in general, how impressionable, and how perhaps you might have someone who needs help perhaps go down that road when perhaps they wouldn't have otherwise, if that makes sense, just as a decision.
Well, it turns out that our gender and our sexuality are two different things. And our gender identification is actually something that's biologically driven, that happens about the 16th week of pregnancy, where it will determine. And that's why you sometimes hear individual that will say, in my head, I don't feel like I'm in the right body, or I don't feel an affinity towards what my sexuality is demonstrating versus what my gender. I think there's a lot of confusion in our community about understanding the differentiations between those two things. I certainly believe, and I have a 15-year-old daughter, as I said, there's a lot of things that they are especially vulnerable. All of us have been there at 15. Now, if we're here today, we were once 15, right? And so we all have had to manage different influences and social things that are going on that make determinations. And what I would say in those instances is be present and be open to being a good listener. A lot of times just paying attention and listening to cues of what our kids are telling us are indicators of things that they're experiencing and that could be traumatic or cause crisis. Yes.
What I'm about to say is not an indictment of the Baker Act, but as a younger lawyer, much younger, I used to do a bunch of Baker Act hearings. One of the Baker Act hearings that stands out in my mind is a gay boy, gay individual. He was his father's only child. And I'm sure his father was very happy when he's Baker Act. And he was beyond 72 hours. And he's put on medication for being gay.
Mm-hmm.
What can be done about this?
I think it's
It
what can.
clogs up the system.
Yeah, it does. Unfortunately, that no longer is an opportunity or an instance or a credible reason to Baker Act somebody. The laws have been dramatically altered and enhanced since the original act was put into effect. One of the things that we can do is to recognize that being gay is not a mental illness.
Marni, thank you for your time and thank you for being here and educating us on this most important topic.
If anybody
Thank
would
you.
like to see me, Jennifer, my colleague, and I will be here to take questions. Thank you again for having us today, David. Thank you so much.
Mary, thank you very much for that presentation. Very informative. Now, for those of you who have silenced your cell phones, it's time to turn them back on again. Remember, we're a business club, so do business with Rotarians, and it's time for our drawing. Okay. The winning card is 039933. Last numbers are 9933. We have a winner, Mike. 9933. You got to come out and get a card. Yeah, you haven't won yet. Okay, you can shuffle. I gotta hold that. You gotta pull the ace, the queen of spades. I can do it if you let me shuffle. All right, you gotta pull the queen of spades out of here. Oh, this is a lot of cards. Oh, it's not the queen of spades, but you do get your money back for the ticket. So we'll tear this one up. Okay, thank you, Peter. All right, pot rolls over to next week. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Denny. So as I said, we are a business club, so do business with Rotarians now. In closing, please join me in the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Our meeting is adjourned.